Namanda, 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 Namanda,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to our hybrid virtual in-person service. My name is Lauren, and I'd like to thank you all for attending this morning from wherever you are for our Dharma family service. Our special guest speaker today is Reverend David Quirk Thornton, who is a Jodo Shinshu minister in the UK. Come from far. Thanks for visiting. So we'll begin this service, as we always do, with a moment of quiet sitting. Reverend Kuahara will strike the bell, and we will sit for 1 or 2 minutes to quiet our minds and prepare to hear the Dharma. Then he'll strike the bell again, and we'll continue with the service.
Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu.
Good job. Reverend Kuahara will now chant the Jusei-ge, which is on page 93 of the Big Purple Service Book.
시무조도 시간 후만족 세후조쇼각 가오무료고 후이다이세슈 후사이쇼빙그 세후조쇼 不上昇学がし成仏道妙正長実法空虚未所門政府上昇学利欲人少年上映主凡行死具無浄土一生天人死人力縁大公不生無才道少女三苦名交際主役難回避知恵言滅死公門案閉塞小膜道通達全宗門高僧上満足いよろ実法日月主樹期天候音符言一種解放像公正苦毒法上大集中説法ししく供養一切仏具足修徳本元年信上満得意三害を女仏無下知通達未不詳願学営利投資最小尊志願若国家大戦の感動国書天人当内妙見ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ願にしく読平等性一切道法菩大心往生安楽ナマンダーツナマンダーツナマンダーツナマンダーツナマンダーツナマンダーツナマンダーツナマンダーツ
If you are able, please rise to follow along with the Gatha, the Bodhi tree, which is on the handout. And then afterward, please remain standing for the golden chain too. Great job. All right, so we will now recite the golden chain. It's on page 15. Please feel free to join in. I am a link in the Buddha's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I must keep my link bright and strong. I will try to be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds, knowing that on what I do now depends not only my happiness or unhappiness, but also that of others. May every link in the Buddha's golden chain of love become bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Good job. Okay. We will now have a Dharma message by Reverend David Quirk Thornton.
Okay, so before we will have a Dharma message by Reverend David Quirk Thornton, I'd like to give a brief introduction of today's speaker. Although David Sensei will talk about himself in his Dharma message, so David Sensei, he was born in Dublin, Ireland, and then moved to UK. And he joined the Shin Fellowship UK 2008. So about 15 years ago, he joined the Jodo Shinshu community. And then 2019, he took a Tokudo ordination. And then probably next year, we will have a Kyoshi, which is the next step of the ministerial certificate. And then he plans to join the Kyoshi next year. Yeah. But so actually David Sensei came to our temple before when he came to the Jodo Shinshu Center for his Tokudo ordination training. So he's not a new face to us. And then so I hope you will enjoy David Sensei's today. じゃあ先生よろしくお願いします。 please.
From the podium? Okay, sure. Of course.
Yeah, camera.
Technology.
Yeah, technology. Yeah.
Of course, no problem. Please join me in Gasho. The light of compassion illumines us from afar. Those beings it reaches, it is taught, attain the joy of Dharma. So take refuge in Amida, the great consolation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Good morning, everyone. It's very, very nice to be back in Berkeley. I was speaking yesterday at the Crossing Over seminar, so I see some familiar faces here today. I apologize in advance that you will hear some of the same material. I always say when I come back to Berkeley, it feels like coming home. And I really mean that, because when we go visit friends, we have a good time and we have a nice experience. But when we visit our family home, it's a different experience. And I really feel that when I come here and see Dharma brothers and Dharma sisters. Reverend Landon and I went through Tuckado together, and Reverend Melissa was here yesterday, and we went through Tuckado together. So it's a very deep connection and a very great joy to be here. And Reverend CJ, fantastic to see you too. I learned something very early on in my spiritual life, which is not to talk for too long. So before I was a Jodo Shinshu minister, I was a Franciscan friar. And when I gave my very first sermon, I was quite nervous and I'd prepared quite hard. And I came out to serve Mass and saw the church was packed. And I was quite nervous. And I started my sermon, and a few minutes in, a gentleman from the front row stood up and walked out. And I was really thrown by this. I thought, my goodness, what have I said to offend this guy? This is terrible. But I steadied myself and I carried on giving my sermon. And after Mass, I was outside greeting people, and a lady came up to me and said, "Oh, Father, I'm so sorry my husband walked out when you were giving your sermon." And I said, "No, I'm sorry. I must have said something to offend him." And she said, "Oh, no, Father, he just sleepwalks." And you were going on a little too long. So I learned to try and keep it short and sweet. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about my experience and how I came to find the Dharma and what Shinran Shonen's teachings mean to me. As Sensei said, I grew up in Ireland, and I grew up in a very happy and very loving family. I had the benefit of great teachers at school, and I was a happy boy, but also a very serious boy. I was very aware of what was happening around me and what was happening across the world, and I wanted to be of benefit to people. So from about the age 15, I was knocking on the monastery door. There was a Franciscan friary near my house, and I said, please let me in. And they said, "No, you have to finish your schooling." So I did. I finished my schooling a year early. And age 17, I returned to the monastery, and they let me in. Now, my time as a Franciscan friar was really positive. They're a wonderful order. very warm, very humble people. They take a vow of poverty as one of their 3 priestly vows. And I really enjoyed living in the friary with my brothers and then going to the convent down the road to visit the Poor Clares, an enclosed order of nuns who are the female branch of Franciscans. And we have a lay branch in Franciscanism as well called the Third Order. So you really felt like you were part of a community, but living in the friary, I really went from being boy to man on that journey. There was also a lot of humor and a lot of playfulness, and so it was a really positive experience. But what I found was the more I studied Christianity, I realized I'm not a Christian. The more I ministered as a priest, I realized I'm not a Christian. And this was, quite a difficult journey because I wanted to help people, and this was my heritage, this was my family tradition. It was all I knew. But I just could not reconcile the teachings with the life I was seeing around me. And I knew I couldn't teach Christianity, and I knew I couldn't stay within the church. And the witness to this spiritual journey was a Jesuit priest, Father Michael Paul Gallagher, very, very, very wonderful priest. He was also professor of literature at University College Dublin, so he was a very worldly man, a very learned man. And year after year after year, he was listening to me and guiding me, and he got to know me really well. So he said to me one day, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "You don't belong here." And at the time, it felt like a rejection. It felt unsettling. And he handed me a book on the Buddha. So a Jesuit priest hands a Franciscan friar a book on the Buddha and says, "You don't belong here." I quickly then realized he really cared for me. He loved me. And his act was an act of courage, because I was a very young man, and he either saw one path ahead of me, which was misery, where I would just carry on doing what I was doing, or that I could find my true spiritual path. And I owe him an immense debt of gratitude for that courage. And then I went to the UK and started my professional training and started a career. And I also started exploring Buddhism. And I went to a Zen group and started practicing and started listening and started reading. I'm a very assiduous student, and so I was reading everything I could get my hands on. And the more I studied Buddhism, the more it made sense to me. The more I was with Sangha, the more it made sense to me. But there were some aspects of Zen practice I didn't enjoy. And I thought, just like many schools of Buddhism, my spiritual director was courageous in saying to me I didn't belong here. I know I belong in Buddhism, but this just doesn't feel like the right school for me. So I started to explore. And in London, we have a fabulous society called the Buddhist Society. So all the Buddhist traditions come together at one building in central London. It's a beautiful Georgian townhouse on a little square. It's idyllic. And it was the house of a British judge by the name of Christmas Humphreys. What a fabulous name. And Christmas Humphreys converted to Buddhism. And when he died, he donated his house to become the Buddhist Society. And he said all authentic branches of Buddhism are welcome here. And there's a library, and there are shrine rooms, and there's a communal room. And the Dalai Lama is the patron, and he has a very nice chair there, which often children, when they come to visit, like to sit in to enjoy the Dalai Lama's chair. So I went to the Buddhist Society, and I discovered all these other schools, and I found Tibetan Buddhism. And there was a wonderful teacher in the UK at the time called Akong Rinpoche. He was a contemporary of Chogyam Trungpa, who ended up on this side of the pond. The two of them escaped Tibet at the same time. About 300 monks left, and only little more than a dozen survived the journey. So Akong and Chogyam Trungpa ended up in the UK. And Chogyam was sponsored to go to university. He was quite a charismatic character, and he was sponsored to go off to university. And Akong, who was the higher monk, worked as a hospital porter to earn some money to put food on the table and to support them as a couple living together. And then eventually things developed, and a monastery was established in Scotland called Samye Ling, the first Tibetan monastery. And Akong established this monastery. So I went to Scotland on the train and met Akong and started practicing Tibetan Buddhism. And I was very, very lucky to be his student for about 13 years. He was quite a tough teacher. We took precepts. We couldn't drink alcohol. We were vegetarian. We had to learn lots of pujas, learning Sanskrit and how to pronounce things. And as you will probably already have guessed, with my accent, it probably sounds a little odd. But I did my best and practiced. And I thought I was getting on really well as a Tibetan Buddhist. And I used to have interviews with Akong Rinpoche. And in my very last interview with him, he ran to the door to greet me, very excited. And this was not normal. An interview normally started with me going in, doing prostrations, sitting, waiting for him to speak. It was very formal Tibetan practice. So he ran towards me, very excited, and said, David, I'm so pleased to see you. I have some great news for you. I'm Rinpoche, what is it? It's great news. I can confirm you are 1% enlightened. So I sat there and I thought, 1% enlightened? 13 years meditating every morning, all those retreats I've done, learning Sanskrit, all this effort, no alcohol, being vegetarian, 1% enlightened. And he burst out laughing. And he said, yes, I am your first witness, and you are 1% enlightened. And I said, oh, Rinpoche, this is tough news. You know, I get it. It's good news, and it's really tough news. Do you mean I have to wait 99 more lives before I reach enlightenment? And he said, no, it's much harder than that. Human life is precious. And he said, it's like this. He said, you may not be reborn human again. To have a precious human life is like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, with a piece of paper and a pencil, and if you can successfully write all of Shakespeare's sonnets before you hit the ground, then you may be reborn in a precious human life again. So it's not 99 more human lives. You've got a much longer journey. And I said, oh, Rinpoche, I don't know if I can do it. And he said, David, I made a mistake. And I said, what was that, Rinpoche? And he said, the Dharma name I gave you when you took refuge was Karma Samten Punso, and it's to Tibetan for perfect meditator. And what I have now realized is that if I give a man like you a name, perfect meditator, you believe it. And he said, what I've noticed you doing over the years is competitive meditation. You sit straighter than everyone else. You sit for longer than everyone else. And you're a champion surfer of your mind. But what's growing is your ego, not your insight, not your enlightenment. And I recognized what he was saying. Again, a tough message to hear. But he said to me, but it's okay. You need to do a Pure Land retreat. And I have just built a new retreat center in the field over there, and it's a Pure Land retreat center. So I thought, this is wonderful. He's built a retreat center just for me. My ego kicked in again. So again, was a pivotal moment where I trusted and deeply respected a teacher who told me, you need to take another path. So I did a Pure Land retreat, and it's the first time I encountered Amida Buddha. And I was blown away. I really recognized my foolishness. I really recognized that Buddhism was the home for me, but I needed to find a path that would be purposeful. So I did my Pure Land retreat, and then I started exploring Amida Buddha further. And I was very lucky. In London, there was another teacher called Sato Sensei, and I went to see him and took some of his classes. And then I read some fantastic books by Reverend John Perez Kavopoulos, Australian priest, who's been to visit here a few times. And then I met Reverend Gary Robinson, who is our sensei in the Shin Buddhist Fellowship UK. And I just settled into my family in Jodo Shinshu. And so my path to Jodo Shinshu was not straightforward. Raised Catholic, Franciscan friar, Zen practice, Tibetan practice, and then Jodo Shinshu. Why am I sharing this with you? Well, not just because it's my story, but it's the story of every Jodo Shinshu follower in the UK. All the members of our fellowship were Christian, then Zen or Tibetan, and then Jodo Shinshu. That's the British path, it seems. We need to find a more straightforward way. And that's what I hope to help with. So I also want to mention, along that journey, I was in Tokyo on business, and I noticed a BCA pilgrimage to Kyoto for Hong Kong. And my business in Tokyo finished on the 14th of January. So I stayed on and got a Shinkansen down to Kyoto and joined Bishop Umezu and a small group of BCA for pilgrimage for Honko at Kyoto. And that was wonderful, really, really wonderful. I'd had many spiritual experiences along my journey. You can imagine being in a monastery and then following Zen practice. I had many spiritual experiences, and this was something of a different league. I felt like I'd stepped into a different landscape. There was hustle and bustle. There was 24-hour Dharmaton. There were people all around just spontaneously saying Namo Amida Butsu. And there was fantastic spectacle of service at Honzan on the 16th of January. And the 16th of January is my birthday. So it felt very special to be there. And it was freezing cold. I couldn't feel my feet. But I felt like I was in a special place. And I've always kept a spiritual diary. And in my diary, that day I wrote these words: in this place, at this moment, the veil between this world and the other world is very thin. In this place, at this moment, the veil between this world and the other world is very thin. That was my reflection at that time at Honzan for Honko. I referred to that as a mystical experience. And I've thought long and hard about using that word, because coming from a Christian tradition, I don't want it to be misunderstood. But honestly, I can find no other word that captures it. So I'm not talking angels and crystals, but I would ask you to please make space in your spiritual life for the mystical. The teachings, the liturgy, the Sangha, this is our path. And within that, please make space for the mystical. Because when that light from afar reaches us, that's mystical. And if we're open to that, we will feel that joy of Dharma in our lives. So I also think we can encounter that when we listen to each other reciting the Nambutsu. And particularly if you have children, siblings, parents, grandparents, if you listen deeply to them reciting the Nambutsu, I think that is also a mystical experience. So I encourage you to not just recite the Nambutsu, but to hear the Nambutsu and to be open to that. So I'd like to turn now, if I may, briefly to the teachings of Shinran Shonin and Shinran Shonin's life, because his very life is a teaching, as well as the many things he wrote down. So when I think of Shinran Shonin, I can really relate to him. And that probably sounds a bit crazy because we're separated by hundreds of years and the other side of the world, and I'm certainly not pretending to be anything like Shinran Shonin. But I can relate to him because, like Shinran Shonin, I practiced for many years and then realized that that was not being of benefit. But there was still a deep commitment to a spiritual path and to being of benefit to others. So I have some understanding of taking that path. And I think when it comes to why the Shinran Shonin do what he did, what I take from that is there was an imperative. Shinran Shonin couldn't just come down from the mountain and live a regular life, take up a trade and, get married and have kids and just live his life. There was an imperative for Shinran Shonin that he needed to find this meaning. He had that awareness of other power, and he needed to find it and understand it and connect with it. And I recognized that in myself. I could have just stayed in the UK and carried on my career, but I needed to stay on that spiritual path. And I think we're very, very, very lucky to have the writings of Shinran Shonin and in English. I want to pay tribute to the translators who translated all these precious teachings so that you and I can enjoy them. I think it's so important that we remember them. We're also very lucky to have the efforts of Hanganji. So Zenmon Sama has been coming to Europe for maybe 40 years now. The next European Shin conference is the 19th or 20th. So yeah, it's every other year. So at least for 40 years, Zenmon Sama has been coming from Japan to Europe to host a conference where all the European Sangha gather in a European city. And this year it's taking place in Germany, in Dusseldorf. So we will gather in September, and some of you I know will come, and some will come from Japan. Those efforts have helped spread Jodo Shinshu to Europe and around the world. We're deeply grateful for that. And I can remember former Bishop Umezu came to a European Shin conference in the UK a few years back. And because we hold these conferences in universities, we have to set up the altar at the start of the day. And I was sitting near him, and I could hear in earshot that when a young man carried out the myogyo, the scroll, and installed it, he was wearing white gloves. And I remember Bishop Mezu saying, wow, such respect. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. And it was a very simple service, but it connected also with Bishop Umezu about the simplicity of our tradition too. And so, in the UK we are, I guess, like the babies of the family. And I really want to acknowledge the efforts of BCA too. because actually the support of BCA has been tremendous to all of us in the UK, especially the priests in the UK who've done all of our training. I did the Jodo Shinshu correspondence course before I started practicing for Tokudo. And all of that support came from BCA. So it really helped ground us and guide us on our path. And I'll finish by just saying why I know Jodo Shinshu is my home and my path for life. I'm not going off somewhere else now. I've done my moving around. And it's because, as I said at the outset, from those words from hymns from the Pure Land, I have found the joy of Dharma. And that joy is not regular joy. It's not just happiness. It's a very deep joy, because it comes from the assurance of knowing I am held and knowing that at the end of this life, I'll be born in the Pure Land. So I feel like I have a deep peace of mind, a deep peace of mind. And in the West, when we talk about mind, we're normally talking about up here. But in the East, when they talk of mind, they're usually talking about here, the heart. So perhaps it's more accurate to say, I feel a deep peace of heart. And that is my joy of the Dharma. So I hope in what I've shared with you today, you find something of benefit for your journey. And I hope you know that across the pond, aside from big royal events and other things going on, and prime ministers behaving or misbehaving, that actually there is a Sangha growing. And it's growing thanks to the nurture and support of Honganji and of the BCA. We are growing up. Maybe soon we'll be the teenagers in the family. And maybe someday we'll be the grown-ups. Because our commitment in the UK is not just to spread Jodo Shinshu there, but also across Europe, and to keep that connection growing with the BCA and with Honganji, so that we can play our part too. We can repay and play our part too in sharing Jodo Shinshu across the world. So I hope together we can find a natural confidence in the true teaching, practice and realization of the Pure Land way. Sorry. It's fine, it's fine. I feel those tears, it's fine.
It's not you.
It's like the sleepwalking, isn't it? I've gone on too long. So, thank you so much for listening, and please join me in Gesho. The light of compassion illumines us from afar. Those beings it reaches, it is taught, attain the joy of Dharma. So take refuge in Amida, the great consolation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo.
Thank you, Sensei, for your talk. Sorry about my son. All right. Thank you so much for that Dharma message. That was wonderful. It made me really think about the golden chain stretching around the world, right? Please rise if you are able to follow along with the Gatha Like Blossoms, which is on page 208 of the Big Purple Service book. Taka, that's why you shouldn't chew on the name tags, man. Okay. Now I'd like to take a moment to welcome the following new guests. If you're comfortable, feel free to either stand or wave so we can say hi to you. Nina Costales and Robert Garvey attended the Crossing Over seminar at JSC this weekend. Hi, welcome. All right, and now we will have our monthly birthday lottery for May. Who's in this one? Let's see. Oh, I did put myself in there. Well, let's hope I don't win. So there's Lauren B, Tina I, Emiko K, Kiyoshi K. Oh, you guys are both May? Hiroto K, Takato K, and Brian N. And not you, Taka, that's why you're sad, huh? I forgot you last month, sorry. Okay. Choose. Okay. And it is Tina. Happy birthday. Okay. So if anyone here has, Tina, congratulations. You won a gift card as a birthday gift from the temple, and the temple office will contact you to send it to you. If anyone here has an April birthday or a May birthday, please take a little gift from the basket in the social hall afterwards. We're going to sing the birthday song now. Ready? Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Yay! Okay, now for announcements. Very exciting. On Wednesday, June 7th at 7 p.m., we'll have the online meditation and discussion. The sign-up link is on the temple website, so check it out. The Making of American Buddhism book launch event will be Sunday, June 18th at 11:30 a.m. right here. And Dr. Scott Mitchell, who's the dean of the IBS, will introduce his new book, which is called The Making of American Buddhism, and talk about how Japanese Americans helped shape American Buddhism. That sounds awesome. Reverend Dr. David Matsumoto, our former minister and also president of the IBS, will moderate this presentation. That sounds cool. All right, so that'll be right after service, it looks like. Easy to stay on for that. Don't forget, we have Obono Dori coming up. Yay, our second year back in person, I think, right? Saturday, July 8th, it will be here this year, so at 6:30 p.m., Saturday, July 8th, at the BBT, and everyone's welcome to participate. You don't have to know the dances. You can follow along like I do every year, not knowing anything. And the practice sessions, though, if you want to learn, are going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7:30 to 9 p.m., on June 20th, 22nd, 27th, 29th, and July 6th. Here at the BBT, I think in the social hall. I'm sure those dates are up on our website, probably, hopefully, so you don't have to remember them all. And then finally, the BBT camping trip is scheduled for July 27th to July 30th, Thursday to Sunday, at the Manchester Beach KOA along the Mendocino coast. Ooh, it's probably going to be really pretty. It's really fun for kids and adults, and there's delicious food and fun activities. So contact Tina, our birthday winner, Tina Iwasaki, to sign up. The details are also included in our Padma as well as the weekly email. All right, and that is it for me. Sensei, you have? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'd like to say thank you to all those who make today's service possible. First, Lauren, thank you very much for being a wonderful chairperson today. ありがとうございました。And then thank you, Bradley and Myron, David, and Berman, and Romeo for your help during today's live streaming service. ありがとうございました。Thank you. And then thank you, Tony and Ryan, for monitoring the chat room on YouTube channel. ありがとうございます。Thank you. And then thank you, Sarah-san, for playing the piano for today's Gatha so beautifully. Thank you very much. Then thank you the May Toba monthly group for preparing the refreshments at the in the social hall after the service. Thank you very much. And then, of course, today's special guest speaker from the UK. Thank you, David Sensei, for wonderful Dharma message. Then I also mentioned that Reverend Jerry Hirano, who is one of the very busy BCA minister. Sensei, how many temples are you taking care of? 4, 5? Yeah. So from Salt Lake, taking care of the 4 BCA temples, and then also director of the Center for Buddhist Education. So to take care of the yesterday's event at the Center, Jodo Shinshu Center. Thank you, Hirano Sensei. And then so today we have Kyra and then Reverend London Yamaoka is here to join us. Thank you very much. Arigatou. And then so today is a Memorial Day weekend. So Reverend CJ is here because Marine Buddhist Temple usually they have a service, and then I'm here or Reverend CJ is here, but no service at the Marine Buddhist Temple. So that's why Reverend CJ is here. And then I would like to express my deepest gratitude to all members who helped the bazaar last week. So already 1 week passed. Right. So last week we had a Satsuki Bazaar, and then many members helped us, and then many people attended our bazaar, and then we had a great success. So I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to all volunteer people, booth chair, and then Karen who took the leadership, to coordinate the bazaar, and then all those who came to our bazaar and then spent a lot of money. Arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you very much. So I think I can conclude. So this concludes today's service. Thank you everyone for joining today's service in person and then virtually. ありがとうございました. Thank you very much.